Stay tuned. Carolina People's coming up next. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're in Myrtle Beach. We're at the Fox 43 studios, and we're visiting with Meg Atkinson, the founder and instructor of the Pegasus Equestrian Center. Good morning, Meg. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Incredible opportunity today to highlight Pegasus, to highlight the big event coming up on May 4th, to highlight you and your life growing up in the PD and now living on the Strand, and surely to think about all the children you've served, either through your role as a child advocate or now particularly with your role with the Pegasus Equestrian Center. So thank you so much. Can we talk real quick about yourself? You're originally from the PD.
I'm originally from Florence, South Carolina, and grew up there. My father was from Latta, South Carolina, and my mom was at in school in Hartsville, so Florence was in between the two, and so that's where I grew up. And grew up also with places at the beach. I spent a lot of time summers at the beach, and so this is home for me.
Florence was in the middle of Latta and Hartsville. How did your folks meet? Did they meet in Florence?
They met on a blind date at Mom was when she was in college. She's originally from Greensboro, so you know, Dad drove to work to Latta for 20-something years from Florence. So somehow when she got out of college, they never moved to Latta.
That's wild.
So we grew up in Florence.
That is wild. And were you living in Florence the whole time prior to moving to the beach?
No, I wasn't. I went to school at the University of Georgia. A little bit of a trader, just simply because my undergraduate was in interior design there, and I moved to Atlanta after that, and lived in Atlanta for around 7 years, but decided to come back home, you know, to where my roots were. So, and I did that I believe it was in 1993. So
you came back in 93, and when you say back to where your roots were you living back in Florence for a little while?
I was in Florence briefly, and I moved to the beach at that time, and was working within a design business that I had at that time, and I did that for, you know, up until fairly recently. But during the time as an interior designer, I began working as a guardian ad litem, and that's what brought me into the world of being a child advocate. So, and I consider the interior design career a career, and the role as a child advocate more of a purpose and something with great meaning, you know, long-term meaning. So
that's a great point as you think about that. The interior design is a career, and the guardian ad litem or child advocate surely is a purpose. I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to do that, and my family has supported me tremendously to give me that opportunity. So, you know, not everyone gets chances like that, and so I'm very thankful for that. Let's talk about your role as a child advocate. When someone hears that word, that conjures up lots of different thoughts, I'm sure. When you think of yourself as a child advocate, what all would that entail?
As a guardian, you're brought into a child's life whenever the court is involved. So you're appointed as an independent advocate for that child. You do an investigation independent of DSS, of any other attorneys or anyone else involved in the case, and you report to the judge what your findings are. You also mentor for that child, you make recommendations, and you are in that child's life as long as they're involved in court proceedings, which is usually pretty traumatic. And it's on a volunteer basis. We are not the private guardians that you often hear of in custody cases. These are, you know, extreme abuse and neglect cases, and children in great need of assistance. So you're with that child as long as they're in court.
Okay, and the guardians that are utilized in custody cases that are privately done, those are also with the child through the court proceedings.
They're with the child. That's usually more of a paid position. It's completely separate. It's gotten a good bit of negative publicity, and has been, you know, I think legislatively, I'm speaking out of turn, but revamped to a great extent. We are completely on a volunteer basis. We have no interest but that child. So we advocate for the children. And we're sometimes with children for 2 to 3 years. I have several cases that I've been with the children for several years. I have extreme abuse and neglect cases that you would probably not want to hear about. I have a brain injury to an infant that I've been with that child for several years. You know, so a lot of different roles there that you play throughout that child's involvement. But the most significant is that you make positive recommendations just simply on behalf of the child. And the law doesn't always protect children as well as we'd like.
Well, how about the children who don't have the benefit of a volunteer with them? I mean, does there always have to be somebody representing their interest, or how about if there aren't enough volunteers available?
Hopefully there is always someone available as a volunteer. I've heard of horrible situations where there have been some shortages. There is a state staff, there's a coordinator. You know, I don't know what our new governor has planned for that program, but you know, I will give you both numbers for Georgetown and Horry County. And in Georgetown County, it's 545-1468, and the coordinator is Louise Cooper. Edna Wright is in Horry County, 248-7374. You know, they're always conducting training and recruiting for new volunteers.
The volunteers throughout the PD, or even, you're probably not familiar with North Carolina, assume they've got a similar situation, but the guardian ad litem programs would be the same throughout at least South Carolina.
Yes, the Guardian program throughout South Carolina is through the governor's office. There's federal money made available to the states for providing this program, so there are very few states that do not provide some sort of Guardian program. The structuring of it varies. Yeah.
Is there some special training for this position, Meg? Obviously, as a volunteer position, there's got to be some training. Is it pretty particularized?
Yeah, there's 30 hours of training. There's a sled check, and you go through that training that familiarizes you with the law, you know, a lot of different situations that you might find yourself in, and then nothing fully prepares you, but then you have support from your coordinators as well. And you don't start with the difficult cases that I now work on. But I like to compare the Guardian program. People say, how do you do that? And then when I got involved with Pegasus, I'm like, how can you not get involved with Pegasus? That's making them happy. They're smiling. Not everyone can emotionally put themselves through some of the adversity we see. I'm one of those people that can't not do it once I saw it. I can't imagine turning my back on these children at this point.
Wow, Meg. Yeah, that's a huge commitment. Yeah, I mean, as you say, so many folks will see it and they think, how can I be involved with that? That would pull me down. I'd be thinking about it all the time, grinding my teeth, couldn't do anything. You, on the other hand, recognize and say, how could I turn my back on it? Absolutely
not. These children teach me something every day. They give so much more back to me. And you know, we were looking at the little angels that I now distribute through Pegasus, and I had a little boy one day who's been through a tremendous amount of abuse, and I keep one of those angels in my pocket at all times. But I was having kind of a bad day, and I went to visit him. He's 7 years old, and he said, you know what I learned in Sunday school this week? I learned, let not your heart be troubled. And so, you know, I left there, and I thought, now why would I be down about anything? Here's this 7-year-old teaching me, you know. So, and he's been through more abuse than any of us could possibly imagine. So, you know, and we see success stories. We make a difference to these kids. So, you know, I consider it an opportunity. I never consider it taking anything from me.
Absolutely. Meg, how are the cases assigned, and how long? I know you said some cases you've been involved with for 2 to 3 years. They could possibly go on longer as long as the child's in front of the court system. How are the cases assigned?
The coordinator assigns the cases based on what she considers the strengths of the volunteer, and you know, you can turn a case down. She can call you, and if you can't manage it at that time, so the coordinator assigns those cases and monitors them with the volunteers.
In all the activities going on with specific children, is there a maximum number of children that any volunteer would take on, or are there limits within the state guidelines as to how many folks you can be involved with?
You know, I don't know that there's specific limits. I have taken on as many as 2 to 3 cases at a time, where most people take on one. So therefore, your time involvement can be controlled. You know, you kind of know at the beginning of a case, to some extent, what your time involvement would be.
After your involvement with the children, have there been children or families that have maintained contact with you afterwards?
Yes, they don't have to, and we aren't allowed to contact them, but for their privacy. But yes, they do sometimes stay in touch. Especially, I have kids that have been adopted into new families, and where it's not always an adversarial position with where they end up.
Can you talk at all, Meg, about even in a general fashion, some of the cases that you'd be involved with, or the levels of activity that situations that children have been in?
I guess we're bound by a certain amount of confidentiality in both cases because we deal with severe sexual abuse. Some of the sexual abuse is parental or within the family, and some of it is outside the family. We deal with a lot of the psychotherapists that work with these kids, and some of the diagnosis varies, but of course it has a tremendous effect. And along with some of the sexual abuse cases, you have severe physical abuse and neglect as well. So we have kids come into care that are in speech therapy. They haven't been around normal speech. They've been educationally neglected. They haven't been in school. They've been medically neglected. It's horrible to imagine what has happened to some of these children. There have even been deaths in our counties. It is a shame. One of my early cases, I went to MUSC at pediatric intensive care for one of my children, and when I walked in, the doctor said, "What are y'all doing to your kids up there?" Because they see so many of our children, and it's epidemic. I think it's just really it's growing, and we've got to do something about it. It's got to stop somewhere. But I have a very low tolerance for abuse, and unfortunately, sometimes the courts have a higher tolerance than I would like to see us have where kids are concerned. They are treated as property, and so we can't always protect them the way we'd like to.
As you may know, on Monday we had the folks in from Citizens Against Spouse Abuse, and it was amazing hearing
wonderful program.
Joanne and Gail and Lisa talk about everything within, and that so much of it is domestic. I mean, the domestic abuse is oftentimes verbal as well as physical, but any level of abuse is, and I'm sure you've seen a heck of a lot of it.
Yeah, very detrimental.
Can you think of, in your position as a child advocate, the most important part of that volunteer position, and then really the most difficult part for you, but probably the most important part?
The most important part is my role to that child. I always say to the other people that I work with within that program, keep your eye on the ball. And that is the child, because you can get really involved in a lot of grown-up issues with attorneys, DSS, and everyone else, and lose sight of the importance to that child. So my most important role is the relationship with the children, and that everything that I do be focused on that, and then I try not to go in a direction that isn't for their benefit. But the relationship with that child is the most important.
How about what you perceive as the most difficult part of your volunteer position as a child advocate?
Seeing them suffer. Yeah, I mean, I will never be able to forget holding a 7-week-old's hand at the intensive care, and he wasn't supposed to survive, and he did. And so seeing them suffer, but then the joy of seeing him now, in a better environment. But seeing them suffer, we had a situation this week too, where you see some children returned to dangerous situations, and they're dangerous, and you can't always do something about that. That's difficult.
Obviously, your activities, I mean, I'm just shudder hearing you talk, Meg. I don't know how to respond to that. It's as if receiving a call, hearing that a relative's died, and just not knowing how to receive that info, oftentimes even laughing, just not knowing how to take information. And I'm sure that's why, as you said, there's so many folks that would see a abusive situation and say, how can I get involved? It'll tear me down. And I'm glad to know folks like yourself, and obviously there are a number of folks who have to be like you to take on that volunteer position. And that must have prompted you at a great level to help set up Pegasus. And that's
Pegasus is the happy time with them. You know, these kids run into your arms, they smile, and I had a child that the foster parent said she hasn't smiled in 2 years, and she smiles when she comes and rides. And so, and we can make a tremendous difference. The horses partner the therapeutic process in so many ways with these kids to enhance their recovery. And so that surprised me in some ways. In other ways, I learned more and more about how it was effective and how it would work and how we make a difference. So if you can't get involved as a guardian, by all means get involved with Pegasus, because that's very easy. For those of you who are a little afraid to see that, I still would say that it has changed my life tremendously. Things don't bother me the way they used to. I see life so differently working with these kids, seeing situations that I thought were difficult. Now I'm so thankful, you know. So it's just deciding to open that door for a lot of people. But Pegasus is easy.
Meg, do you have volunteers at Pegasus?
I do. I have wonderful volunteers, and they love these kids. They love watching their recovery. They love watching them with the horses, interacting with them. And we serve kids not simply abuse and neglect cases. We also serve kids who are, as I said, the neurological injuries and brain injuries, autism. We've worked with a lot of autistic kids, and these kids are magnificent. I think the tendency is to think there's not a child in there because they aren't always socially integrative. That's one of the symptoms of autism, and they're wonderful kids. And they can communicate with us and with the horses non-verbally. And it's a very wonderful thing. The interaction is great. And
for some viewers who may not have seen you last month or the month before when you were on, equine facilitated therapy, simply much of what prompted you to found Pegasus and get it going, and now have events like the May 4th, the day we'll be talking about in a few minutes. But can we talk about exactly, for viewers who may not be familiar with you, I mean, a lot of viewers probably never even touched a horse or been near a horse. What is equine facilitated therapy?
Well, when we first start, it's just the interaction between the horse and the child, because it is more nonverbal, and a lot of these kids don't communicate verbally their feelings. And you're asking a child to tell you how they feel about something at 4, and that's difficult for you and I to do.
Yeah.
At 4, it's impossible. So the interaction with the horse becomes something that tells you a lot about that child, and the process of the horse becoming part of the therapy is great, even from the ground. When you put them on the horse, you deal with so many issues, whatever their diagnosis might be. The fear, you know, we have them turn around backwards on the horse and lay down, or, you know, do a lot of different exercises. If a child has attention deficit, we put them through certain exercises that they have to ride in certain patterns and focus more effectively. It increases confidence is the most overall benefit that we see across the board. They're on a big animal. They learn to start, you know, to walk, stop, turn, you know, and to control that horse. But then the relationship with the horse becomes very important.
Meg, when did you found Pegasus?
It's been in existence for 1.5 years. And you know, we're in a leased facility. We started it. It's been very challenging, but the success of it at this point is such where we would hope to be able to grow and expand it and keep it in existence. It is a 501c3, so we depend on the community to, you know, it's a nonprofit corporation, so it's the community's responsibility to accept it and say, you know, this is important to us for, you know, the IRS to allow us to still exist on that basis. So we're very, you know, impressed at how much support we've gotten at this point.
Absolutely. Meg, have you always owned horses or been around them since your youth?
I have. I started very young riding. I did ride through my teenage years, and I always say I would have been a very difficult child myself if I hadn't had horses. But I rode competitively, then went to college, and Dad said at that point, you're paying for it. So it kind of went away for a while. And then this opportunity came up, and I was working with children, and I thought, you know, God puts us all here for a purpose, and I think this might be mine because I have this ability to combine the two, you know, the therapy and the horses. So.
Which is spectacular. And what ages are most of the children that are participating in the Pegasus program, Meg?
They're, we have kids under 4, but we ride them weekly, probably at 4 on up. Now, we have some adults, too, but we focus mostly on children. So it depends on the disability as to how I qualify our priorities there. Because right now, we're trying to grow and certify more instructors. And until we do that, our time slots are, we're limited, but we're hoping to grow into the fall and doubling, the children we're serving now. So,
How many children are you able to accommodate now?
We're at about 15 to 20 a week. I'm the only certified instructor right now, and there has to be a certified instructor there. I'm a little slow to combine a lot of kids in classes together if I don't think it's going to be effective. But our goal would be to do 40 in the fall. We've had the horses donated where we can grow to that by growing our volunteer base and our certified instructor base.
Who pays for your services, Meg?
Well, we depend on donations from the community mostly, and we are doing a fundraiser on May 4th for that reason. We ask the kids that are referred to us if you can afford it. It's $25 a session, which doesn't really cover the cost, but that allows the scholarships that are donated for children for the sessions to be used for kids that can afford it. But mostly we depend on donations.
And if someone wanted to donate, what's the number they'd want to call?
The number is 650-9234.
Okay.
And that is at the facility, and there's not always someone at the desk, but we'll get back with you as soon as we can. If we don't answer that number, there's a recorder too.
That's 843-650-9234.
Yes.
And that's where folks could get directions down to the event on May 4th.
Absolutely.
They could offer to volunteer there. They could let you know they'd like to donate not only their time, but also maybe their resources.
Certain resources, materials.
Spectacular.
Yes. And the event will include a lot of things for kids and for family. Anyone's invited. Tickets will go on sale this week. They're $10 for adults, $5 for children, and children under 4 to 12 is $5, and under 4 is free, obviously. And then all the foster children of Horry and Georgetown County are also invited to attend on that day. We'll have balloon artists, face painting, karaoke, and we're trying to locate a big balloon-type, moonwalk structure or something to that effect. We still need some help with tents and chairs and tables, but we've got someone hopefully helping us with that. There's food, and it'll just be a fun day to come out and see all the miniature horses, too. I forgot to mention our famous miniature horses.
Yeah, that'll be great.
That look like dogs. Mostly they're not any bigger than most of your dogs out there, and they think they're people, but they're miniature horses. So.
Meg, what is Pegasus hoping to accomplish on May 4th?
We hope to do enough with our fundraising to grow into next fall to be able to accommodate more riders. We are in a leased facility, and we ultimately need a permanent location as well. So I've been working with some foundations about some land grants or grants to that effect. But the more success we can have with our fundraising, the more children we can serve. And the need is great. And I always feel like we're falling short of that need sometimes, and I hope to see us catch up with that.
Absolutely. What do you still need for the May 4th event? Is there anything, if a viewer didn't have resources but possibly could donate some items? What are some items that you still need?
We're doing door prizes, so by all means call, and if any ideas that an event for a child, something that they think would be fun, by all means call, and any volunteers that would like to volunteer weekly with the lessons. We've got a broad base of volunteers, and many volunteers come weekly with what they deem to be their children that they work with. But we always need some backup, and we're always willing to train new volunteers for that too, if you like animals. And May 4th we need volunteers for that day too. So if nothing else, on that day.
What are some things that volunteers would be doing that day?
They might be working at the gate collecting the tickets. They might be working at the different booths. I think you guys were coming to show some of the videos, and,
right.
and we might try to do a demonstration with the horses. We're not sure yet. So we need a lot of help serving the ice cream, the food, and some of that too.
Great thing on a Saturday to be down, and viewers from the PD or southeastern North Carolina could easily come down.
Oh, yes.
Pretty easy to find Pegasus.
It is. It's on McDowell Shortcut Road. It's just off of 707, and I think locals know it as just beyond the McDowell Shortcut Road dump site. But yes, it's just down from there and close to St. James Middle School.
And close to Inlet Square Mall down near the Home Depot down there. Folks would know it if they've traveled to Charleston even from Little River. They would know it. They'd pass that on the right.
And Home Depot has been kind to donate to us as well and help. We need corporate sponsors, too. That brings up another point, because corporate sponsors are invaluable. And a lot of times there's programs that we don't know about, and Belks just did a charity day, and, so that's very, very helpful. And a lot of times they have funds that are for this type of special interest type.
Yeah. And Meg, if someone, this is 2.5 weeks from the event, if there was a corporation that would be potentially interested in sponsoring, if they couldn't sponsor this event, could they sponsor Pegasus on a year-round basis?
You sure can. There's different levels of sponsorship, but there's not a time when it isn't valuable. And I am a full-time volunteer, so at all times it pretty much goes directly to putting a child on a horse, caring for the horses and putting a child on a horse. So at any time, but we are preparing a program for this event. So corporate sponsors, we can, also advertise for them as well with our program.
We've got about 30 seconds, Meg. What's the most important or the most thrilling aspect for you of introducing a child to a horse for the first time?
Just the smile and the look in their eyes, they just light up, and it's, you've just reached a child that maybe hasn't been, that you just see something that I think is a miracle. I watch miracles every day.
She watches miracles every day, and if you've been sitting here the last 30 minutes, you'd remember the words, "Let not your heart be troubled." That child who Meg has worked tireless hours for as a volunteer to help children, and now through Pegasus. And you can get out there and volunteer if you call 843-650-9234. Thanks for being with us this morning, Meg. Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank Meg Atkinson and the Pegasus Equestrian Center for giving special needs children wings of hope.